What if I told you there was an investment strategy that could add $200 to $500 per week in rental income to an existing property, boost your yield by 2 to 3%, and cost less than $180,000 to implement? And it doesn't even require buying another property. I'm talking about granny flats, and in Australia's current rental crisis, they might be the most underrated investment strategy going around. In this video, I'm breaking down the costs, the returns, the council requirements, and whether a granny flat makes sense for your portfolio. Welcome to PropSpotter's YouTube channel. My name's Sean and I'm the head of research at PropSpotter, and we help you find investment property that'll suit your outcomes for a quarter of the price for a full service buyer's agent. But now let's get into it. Australia has a rental crisis. National vacancy rates are around 1.7%. In many suburbs, it's below 1%. Tenants are competing fiercely for any available property. Rents are at record highs, and new housing supply is chronically insufficient. Granny flats directly address the shortage at the individual property level. You add a second dwelling to your existing land, you get a second rental income stream. The tenant gets affordable accommodation, and you've just significantly improved your overall yield and cash flow without buying another property. The multi-generational housing trend is also driving demand. LJ Hooker identified this as one of the top trends for 2026. More families are choosing to live together, parents with adult children, grandparents moving closer to family. Granny flats enable this flexibility. Let's talk numbers. A typical granny flat in Australia costs between $100,000 to $180,000 to build, depending on size, fit out quality, and location. Kit homes at the lower end, custom builds at the higher end. Rental income from a granny flat depends on the area, but typically ranges from $200 to $500 per week. In tight rental markets, which is most of Australia right now, you're at the higher end of that range. Let's model a scenario, shall we? You spend $150,000 building a 2-bedroom granny flat on your investment property. It rents for $400 a week, which is just shy of $20,000 a year. That's a gross return of 14.1% on your build costs. Even after expenses, you're looking at 10+% net return. Try getting that from any other property investment. And here's the kicker. The granny flat, if executed correctly, also increases the overall value of your property. Most valuers will assign additional value based on the rental income it generates. So you're building equity and cash flow simultaneously. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky because granny flat rules vary by state and council area. Let me give you the broad overview. In New South Wales, granny flats are relatively easy to build under the Affordable Housing SEP. In many cases, you don't even need full council approval. A complying development certificate is enough if you meet the criteria. Your block typically needs to be at least 450 square meters, and the granny flat can't exceed 60 square meters. In Queensland, they're called secondary dwellings. Most councils allow them on blocks above 600 square meters. Size limits vary by council, typically 60 to 80 square meters. You'll usually need a development application. In Victoria, up until recently, granny flats had stricter rules, but regulations are loosening to address the housing shortage. Check your specific council, rules are ever changing. In Western and South Australia, ancillary dwellings are generally permitted on blocks above certain size thresholds. Again, it's best to check with your local council. My strong recommendation, before you commit to building, talk to a town planner or your local council's planning department. They'll tell you what exactly is required and allowed on your specific block. Don't always assume, be sure to confirm. Granny flats, in my opinion, are one of the best kept secrets in the Australian property investing market. In a rental crisis, they add much needed supply. For investors, they generate returns that most standalone properties can't match, and they're becoming easier to build as governments loosen regulations to address the housing shortage. If you own an investment property with a decent sized block, seriously look into a granny flat. Run the numbers, check with your council. It could be the best investment decision you make this year. Subscribe for more strategies like that go beyond the obvious. Drop a comment if you've built a granny flat or are thinking about it. I'd love to hear your experience. I'll see you in the next one.